Fresh and
All right, welcome back to another episode of Fresh and Buds. It is episode, I think, 72. It is the last week of 2022, and it has been one hell of a year for many, many reasons. And we are joined by a awesome bud. What a way to close out the year, but Arsenal passes. Hayden Dale, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back on. I must have done all right last time because you invited me back on, so I didn't turn away your listeners. So that's a good start.
Yeah. Well, hey, it was a real pleasure talking to you last time, and it's probably I guess about 6 months, 6 months ago, we last chatted, and we have some catching up to do. Lots happened since the 6
A little
months.
bit.
I think we were chatting about Uprising before it came out when you were last on, and geez, we've had 2 set releases since then. So we have a lot to talk about. We want to get into how 2022 has gone for Flesh and Blood. Some things. Well, was it great? Was it not so great? We will decide, and we're also going to take a look at 2023 and see how we kind of feel about it. Maybe we'll talk about some New Year's resolutions if you have any. But before we get into all that, I do want to shout out the Patreon, which you guys can check out in the show notes. Get some little bonus content. It helps keep the mics on the the lights hot and the mics on. No, I usually do it the other way. The mic's hot and the lights on. Either way, everything's hot and on. And you get a membership to the Romping Club, which is a Patreon exclusive channel in the Buds Discord. The Buds Discord also is free for all to join. That is also in the show notes. And also, I want to give a shout out to the Bud Rush Bellow, our live podcast, which is on Wednesdays at 9:30 Eastern time, New York time, on YouTube, that I do with Mr. Viz, aka Gary. And then also, we have some merch that you can also check out, which is also in the show notes as well. You get a Bud beanie and some other fun stuff. Now, Hayden, welcome back. It's good to see you. Good to hear you.
You can see me.
I can see you. Yeah. Well, hey, listen, that's a Patreon exclusive. No, I'm kidding. What's new in the world of Hayden Dale, my friend?
Yeah, I was just thinking. You just said hot and on. We're hot and on. We're here to chat. What's new? I mean, it's been we first met in Jersey, start of the year, and we haven't seen each other since. I think we did the podcast a couple of weeks later, a month later, and then like you say, 6 months. I mean, for me personal, I got engaged earlier in the year, so it's been exciting. That just means a lot of planning, bit of wedding planning, things like that. So, and then a lot of travel for Flesh and Blood. I did a bit of sort of back of the napkin math just before we jumped on to work how many miles I've flown this year. I'm pretty certain I've flown over 150,000 miles this year for Flesh and Blood. So it's been it's been a big year of travel for playing Flesh and Blood. And the last couple of months is, World Championship wrapped up start of November, got home, and just it's been a bit of downtime, this kind of Flesh and Blood off season almost, although we've had a new set, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. So although it is off season and it should be in theory quieter, and I can spend a bit more time doing other things, which I definitely have been. Also, the hooks of Dynasty have sunk into me. So,
well, that's good to hear. Also, congratulations on the engagement.
Thank you.
Do you have a date for the wedding yet?
Not yet. We going back to New Zealand early next year in February to look at some venues and sort out a date. So like I say, we've been together for 11 years. Another couple of years won't hurt,
Yeah. I will say, as someone who once went through it, you take your time and make sure it's right. And that should be very exciting. Yeah. And now that's a lot of miles to fly, especially coming from, you're in Australia. That's like, you come to the States twice. You came to the Worlds. That is a long flight. Do you mind those flights, or at this point are you used to them? Because I've never flown that long, and I'm not a huge fan of flying to begin with, so I don't know how it would go.
Do I mind them? I mean, it's a
Yeah.
relative to. I'll endure them. I don't find them as bad as I know a lot of others do. I don't mind too much. I guess the more you fly, the more opportunities you get to bank points for nice sort of upgrades to premium and things like that, which helps. But the East Coast flight is definitely the hardest. Getting to your neck of the woods, it's that's about 24 hours. That's 2 flights. Worlds was in comparison pretty easy. It's 1 flight from Sydney to San Francisco, and then or you can go to LA and then San Jose, or whatever way you want to do it. But it's pretty easy comparatively. And then the European flights. I mean, it's not ideal, but that's like 30 hours.
Oh my
But I
God.
definitely prefer to do them as little as possible. But a couple a year, it's not the worst thing, and it's all worth it really. So
Well, yeah, it's interesting looking at 2023. We did have somewhat of an OP announcement, right? We know that it's going to be limited to 1 Pro Tour, and then Nationals, and then Worlds, and there is talks of the Pro Tour being back in the New Jersey area. I'm not sure if that's true. There's rumors flying everywhere all the time. But I imagine Worlds would make sense for the states again as well. So hopefully, with down to 1 Pro Tour, there'll be a little bit less less miles in the air for you. But we'll get to that. Now, speaking of the OP announcement in 2023, and before we get to 2022. Do you have anything in store for you in 2023 that you're excited about, that you're looking forward to?
I'm excited to play Flesh and Blood again. I mean, that's something that's not going to go away for me. I'm looking forward to the Pro Tour, to Worlds, to Nationals, to a bit more of an organized play system in 2023, which I'm sure we'll touch on. But I think that's going to be a pretty big win. The kind of you just talked about the announcement, right, of that like 1 PT, and how do people feel about that? I mean, like you say, it does mean less travel, a bit more balance to life, I think, and still being able to play Flesh and Blood. So yeah, I mean, other than that, like I said, got some wedding planning to do. Probably look to do a bit of personal travel, but nothing too big planned. 2022 has been like a blur. It's gone so fast. So much has happened, and you need to probably need to take some time and take stock for 2023. But I think a bit more information about Flesh and Blood that's come out in the last couple of weeks definitely makes it a bit easier to do that. Start planning some things. So because it is a big part of not just my life, a lot of people's lives at this point, especially when it comes to hinging on what the OP announcements are.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I personally would have liked to have known a little bit more, but we got enough, and we know at least how the first 2 or 3 months are going to go, and then we'll jump into it from there.
I feel like LSS has this art of giving you information, but not really giving you any information. They give you, especially James, he comes and he says all these exciting things, and you go, yeah, that's great. And then you walk away, and then you go, hold up, we got no dates there, James. We got no confirmed location. What's going on? You've got me all riled up. I'm excited. But where am I going and when am I going?
Yeah. I mean, I feel that as well because we know that there's things happening, but where are they happening? I mean, I think somebody just messaged me right before I got on, like, hey, are you going to the Pro Tour this year? And I was like, if it's somewhere feasible and I have a date for it, I would love to go, and it's hard to kind of just just give a blanket answer. Yes, I would love to, but
you've got a pretty good ballpark, right? April in the East Coast of North America. So
yes, yeah. Hopefully that's true. I mean, yeah, the April, because they did tell us that 3 weeks after Outsiders is released, or 3 weeks after a set is released, they want these large events. Yeah. So April, hopefully New Jersey again, and I can just drive. But and it is funny that you said that 2022 was a blur, because even when I was getting ready for this podcast, I was like, this was all in 2022, like all these things, all these sets, and it's like, this is crazy. And we're gonna get into it right now. Do you have any wants or predictions for 2023? Is there anything that is like kind of on your wish list?
Flesh and Blood wise, definitely. I mean, top of my list is play a lot of limited Flesh and Blood. Didn't really get to do it this year. We got one draftable set, one limited playable set, in which no bones about it, the sealed kind of sucked for that set. It wasn't played right for a good reason. But the draft portion, I bit of a contrarian, I guess. I really like Uprising Draft. I think that format is a really good step in the right direction. What I really want is I want us to kind of get the limited set that we need and deserve. I think we need a really strong draft set that can drive the game forward, because you look at other games, and where games are designed for limited and TCGs and they build this community around the limited side as well. We have constructed specialists. We have these players that are specialists in Guardians and Lexi players, and we have all these specialists in the constructed world, but we don't really have limited specialists at this point because we haven't really had the sets to support it. And I think what looks like two limited sets on the horizon for 2023, that's something that makes me really excited. My want is I want them to be really good limited sets that enable Flesh and Blood to go through limited play. Because I think limited play is also some of the best ways to get players into the game. It's super accessible. You don't have to show up with a deck. You don't have to, invest your money into these legendaries and things that you want to get straight away. You can actually play for a month. You can go to a draft once a week, learn the game that way, or play some Seal with friends or whatever it is, open product, gain cards that way, and still be playing the game. So that's kind of like pretty high on my list, to be honest. So I'm really excited to see what Outsiders is as a limited set.
Well, yeah, if you listen to James and LSS, Outsiders is going to be the craziest draft experience that we've ever had. Obviously we've only had a certain amount of draft
Every
experience,
set,
every set is the best and most unique. Though, actually last week's episode, which actually isn't out yet while we're recording, is I dropped a theory on what that would mean.
Okay.
I kind of, I'm gonna throw it at you, Hayden. I want you to tell me if it's valid or if I'm too nuts. I'm trying to go too crazy. But one of the things I was thinking about, well, what is Flesh and Blood Draft missing? Right. I think it's missing a variety of archetypes within the heroes that you draft. And I was like, well, how do you do that? And I looked to Constructed. Well, a lot of different archetypes in Constructed come from different weapons. Now, what if we had 2 different token weapons per hero that you can draft, so that that you're drafting for I don't know, a club, or you're drafting for the axe that one of the heroes is able to play. What do you think about that?
I think it's a great idea. I think you've nailed it. I do think so I agree with you. The biggest problem with Uprising Draft is that there's not enough archetypes within the heroes. You basically have three archetypes, which is the 3 heroes.
Mm-hmm.
You go back to Tales, you have more like 6 to 9, which even still then doesn't, and you go back to Welcome to Wraith, and I love Welcome to Wraith Draft because of the depth of the archetypes. And there's so many different archetypes you could draft, and the generics really drive a lot of that. And you don't get that with Uprising. There's one less card in the pack. There's yellows that don't do anything. There's a lot of like homogenous cards that just, it doesn't really lend itself well to that. So having extra tokens available that lead you to build around those, that's one way to do it. I think introducing generics back in a way that can be flexible is really interesting. I think having a power level of a set reduced slightly in terms of limited, which this leads to balancing things, but that's not our job. We don't balance stuff. They can work that out. But if you reduce the power level of the limited set, I think you can have a lot more archetypes a lot easier, because the balancing job becomes easier. You have the games go for longer, so the more turns in a game, the more interesting sort of things you can do through the game. You can get to second cycle or all this stuff, right? Which we haven't really seen since, to be honest, in my opinion, since Welcome to Wraith from limited set. Maybe a little bit in Monarch, but yeah, I would love to see it if it comes through weapons, like you say, if it comes through the use of generics. I mean, this is a 4-hero set, right? From what it seems like. So are we going to see a return to more of the mechanical style of play that we saw with Welcome to Wraith and Arcane Rising when it comes to limited? I really hope so, because a lot of players have never experienced that. A lot of players' limited experiences is Dynasty and Uprising. And I mean, I think it's good, but it's definitely not the best, and I don't think it's how LSS see the limited formats going forward.
Yeah, and I have faith that they will, and we as Uprising, was definitely kind of an on rails set for limited. We
For sure
did see like something like Phoenix Flames get introduced to the design of the set, which was different. It didn't have as much of an effect in terms of the deck building and the archetypes, but it's something, and something that I hope that they continue to check out. But so let's get into 2022. I know I've been teasing 2022 for so long, but here we go. So since we last chatted, you've played in Pro Tour Lille, Nats, and Worlds. I want to know, what were your favorite moments from those events, both personally and competitively?
Yeah, it's been a couple of Pro Tours this year, hasn't it? The other one probably for me that actually stands out outside of those two events as well is the team calling. So the team calling alongside the Uprising World Premiere, there was the team callings around the world. In Sydney, here in Australia, we got to play the Southern Hemisphere one, I guess, and we top four that calling, which was an awesome experience. That was because getting to play with like a team, the Pro Tours are great. You work with people in the lead up to these Pro Tours, but then when you get there on the day, it's you, and it's only you. You know what I mean? You're sat there, you're playing your games, you're battling against your opponent, you're battling against your mental game. It's all sort of played out by yourself ultimately. And so I think to have this team experience was awesome, to be chatting during games, to be conversing about plays. It felt like a lot of the things I really enjoy about the testing process that you lose during a big event. So top four of the team calling. I also got to do it with two of my friends. That was an awesome experience. We were in the Sydney calling. We were the only non-LSS team that made the top four. Ultimately couldn't go the whole way. Would have loved to have won the event, but it was a really great experience. Had a really good time. So yeah, that's kind of like a big highlight for me in terms of the competitive side. But then, PT, Nats, Worlds, just the honestly, it sounds so corny and cheesy, but the people I continue to meet at these events is like the biggest thing. That even if the event goes poorly, like Lille wasn't a particularly great event. Day 2, I think I finished like 7th or something, didn't cash, but I still had an amazing time and got to spend time with people I'd never met before, the European community that I hadn't met prior to that. So every place I go, there's new communities to meet, there's new people. I mean, even at Worlds on Sunday, like I felt like I don't think I ate on the Sunday, apart from we had a quick like lunch with some of the LSS devs after the dev challenge. But other than that, I felt like the whole time I was just like talking and meeting people. And it was such an awesome experience to do. So people I hadn't, I'd talked to online or I knew of. I think of like Hank. I hadn't met Hank before. Got to meet Hank for the first time. There's so many people like that, and that was such a great experience from like a competitive standpoint. I mean, top 16 at Worlds is a huge sort of competitive takeaway for me. I 6-0 draft at Worlds, which was like something that as a format I love limited, and to be able to stand there and say I 6-0 the draft format at Worlds against some of the best players in the world was definitely fantastic experience. And would have loved to make top 8. Ultimately, top 16 at Worlds was still, I still take that away. 2 top 16s this year from New Jersey and Worlds. I'm definitely not disappointed from my sort of competitive standpoint. And then just a lot of from a social standpoint, again, a lot of eating and drinking with people that I like to spend time with.
It really is the best part of it, right? I could maybe, if I racked my brain, think about the matches I had at the New Jersey calling, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what sticks out to me are the meals and the good times afterwards. Sure. When it's all said and done. Now, yeah, it is pretty incredible. 2 top 16s, right? We're going to get you that top 8 in 2023. I have no doubt. But it was one hell of a run, and I think it was a pretty awesome year for competitive stuff. There was a lot though, right? And the team thing that you mentioned was something that I even, there were so many events I forgot I even played in a team calling as well, with Logan Peterson and a Bud Salty Sea Cat. We did okay. So Anthony, who's Salty Sea Cat, was on Data Doll, so we were fighting an uphill battle, but it was a lot of fun.
Doing it the hard way.
And, yeah, and I was on Levias, so like it's not like much was getting better from there. Logan did make the smart choice and play Kasai, but it was a good time. Now, in terms of team stuff, would you like to see some team draft events? I know that they're hard to do, but that is like my dream.
I love team draft. That's probably the other highlight I didn't mention, is that so far at all of these events on the Sunday, Sunday is team draft day. Like that is, haven't made a top 8 so far. So Sunday, I haven't been playing on Sundays. I generally don't play the battle hardens. Just honestly, I just don't find them that enjoyable. I feel like I've played a lot of Flesh and Blood, and the I would say if I had to attribute things, it's like 70% I'm there to play, 30% there I'm like there to socialize, eat, drink, like hang out with my friends. Like that's a big part of it. Like this community is friggin' awesome, right? So on Sunday it's team draft time, and we actually got to do a team draft with some of the devs at Worlds after the dev challenge, which was awesome. And the format, I think there's some things that you probably need to look at for the format to make it work. But you can do like a 4v4 team draft. Obviously, that makes it a tough thing for sort of point standpoint. But I think that format can definitely work in this game. And we've seen it in other games before. I know in Magic, it was a 3v3 situation, and you see a lot of people play that. It never really got played at a competitive standpoint. But why not? Like, we have one of the best communities in a TCG just ever, full stop. Why not leverage that and have more team events? And I think, Team Limited is potentially a way to do that. Whether that's, you go to a calling and day one is Team Sealed and then day two is Team Draft. Like, that could work. I think, does a set support it? I think a 4-hero set does support both 6 and 8 person team draft. I've done both 6 and 8 person team draft, 3v3, 4v4. Both feel pretty good and really interesting.
Yeah, that would be really incredible. Yeah, the sealed so far seems a little bit more viable, but draft would just be a dream, and definitely jealous of getting to play team draft against some LSS employees. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It was we didn't win though, so
Yeah,
we don't talk about that.
I'll edit that out. No, it's staying in. Damn it. Now, on the content creation side, how has Arsenal Pass kind of grown in 2022? And I can't imagine it's only grown in 2022 along with the game.
I mean, we're super fortunate, I think, with the support we've had from players around the world. And I say around the world because we've had a lot of different, you look at your analytics and you can see from countries who's listening, and we get a lot of support from North America and listenership, but Europe's really grown for us, and parts of Asia. And yeah, we've just continued to, I think, find what we want to do, which is be a source of competitive content, but also, I guess, it's been our journey as well as what we've shared with people, I think. And that has really unfolded over 2022 with the Pro Tours and World Championships and these callings. This year has been a fantastic year for both myself and Brendan from a competitive standpoint. Top 8s, wins. The year started for me with a Nationals win, which was definitely actually a highlight. Brendan top 8 in Dallas, and then of course Brendan's also moved over to the commentary side now. So there's been this kind of like journey for both of us, and I think we've shared that through Arsenal Pass and the content we've done this year, along with bringing on guests, to do deck techs. We've focused a lot more on what we feel like we want to do, which is share as much of the competitive insight of the game, whether that be from a skill standpoint and fundamentals, things like that, or it be about sharing these decks and bringing people who are experts on these decks to come on and show us how it's done, basically. So it's been a really cool journey, and I think we've got more in store for 2023. Time is always a limiting factor. It's a hobby. It's the side sort of thing for us, but it is a massive part of why we continue to play Flesh and Blood. Me and Brendan were talking about this the other day. I said to Brendan, did you miss playing at Worlds? And he's like, yeah, for sure, I miss playing at Worlds. But being able to sit here now afterwards and have this conversation and continue to do what we do with Arsenal Pass alongside what he did with casting, I think that for him was like, enough fulfilling to be to that point. And for me, it's like, yeah, I got to play and then also get to the other side of it. So yeah, it's been a really cool journey in 2022, and looking forward to what we can do in 2023.
Yeah. I mean, I know everybody, a lot of the buds and a lot of people I talk to, they all look forward to it, and it's really cool what you both have built over there. Now, is there anything that stands out to you in 2022 that was like kind of your favorite moment in the content creation sphere? Because a lot of your the big moments that we all know about were at Worlds, your top 16, at the Pro Tour, the Nats, and all that. What was it in content creation?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's going to be a bit of a running theme, so I won't like harp on it too much. But definitely the people that it continues to allow us to meet is just, we've had amazing people come on the channel for podcasts and competitive deck techs and things like this year. We don't do a lot of guest stuff. It's not really our format. You and Flake are two people that do it so well. So we leave that to you guys, when it comes to interviewing, things like that. But when it comes to the competitive standpoint, we do from time to time try and bring people on who have the insight to specific things that maybe we don't have. And those have definitely been highlights. But probably two, like from a things we've put out standpoint, we've done vlogs for Lille and the World Championships, which I really enjoy doing. I think it's kind of a cool way for us to present our journey through these events. And then the other was, I really enjoyed doing my deck tech from nationals. After winning nationals, I literally got home, went to bed. The next morning I woke up and I had the day off, and I just pumped out this deck tech on my nationals deck, and I just had so much energy doing it because I was just so I was on cloud nine after this nationals win. And that video I think is now our most watched video on the channel, has over 10,000 views. So that was definitely, not only was it super exciting to make that, but also everything that went into it, and then people have really responded well to it. So definitely a pretty big highlight, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, deck techs are so important in this game, in any game, right? And I look at Flesh and Blood deck techs, and, you kind of say that's one of your most successful videos. And the cool thing about Flesh and Blood, and we get, new cards added, and obviously, heroes can get Living Legend, but, if it's I don't know, Levia or something that's going to take a little bit longer to get to Living Legend, people can go back and find an older deck tech, in a year or two, they can go back and find that deck tech. And they can be like, oh, wow, a lot of this still kind of applies to how this deck is being built now, which is cool. Except, now I get to look at that, analyze it, and say, oh, well, I have all these really cool cards from Dynasty or Outsiders or whatever that I can add to it and try to enhance it, which is neat. And, and it's very cool. And that sounds awesome.
I love that about this game, is that, like you just said, there's going to be these videos that, or this content, or these ideas that endure because the game is, especially for a lot of the heroes, is iterative, right? There's changes, but a lot of the fundamentals still stay there. There's a video on the LSS YouTube channel, which is the Devastation series. Going back, I think it's Monarch, so it's 2021 they did this, and there's a video where Jason Chung plays Livia. And I know personally, I still go back to that video and be like, I'm going to go watch that and try and get inside Jason's mind and what is he trying to do here? Why did he look at Livia this way? Because it's one of the only videos we have of someone playing Livia at that level, I think. So, and he, Livia still seems to be a bit of a mystery. So you go to the source, the person who created it, how do they think about it? And there's things like that. I know a lot of people came up to me at Worlds and were like, oh, I loved your Kano video from PT New Jersey. I've watched that to understand the combo. I think there'll be these things that continue to be ongoing, that's really good for, I think, Flesh and Blood content in general, because, a lot of the time in certain games or TCGs, I think a great example of this is you can take a game that has, especially online games, where the meta changes so fast. You might take a MOBA or something, and a hero is just irrelevant, a season later, and someone might have done a whole video series on a certain character that just isn't played anymore. And that kind of sucks, right? To have that content just be lost in the wasteland. But I think with Flesh and Blood, you see that a lot less, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, and it gives us a lot of hope, I think, for the continued success of the game, and the continued success of just content for the game, which is very exciting. Now, it's been a huge year of growth for Flesh and Blood, no doubt. We had some very large set releases. It would have been better if it was more draft releases. I know we both agree, but and we had a lot of OP Pro Tours, Worlds, and the community's been great as well. And I kind of wanted to go through first. We're going to do the fresh faves, but we already did the fresh faves with you when you came on. But I want to do it for of 2022. So
all right, let's do it.
I'm going to ask you, who. Well, I'm going to start now. Who is your favorite hero that came out in 2022?
Oh, favorite hero that came out in 2022. I have to rack. So we've had Uprising, Everfest, and Dynasty, right? So we've had a bit more of a limited pool. I got excited by this and was going to snap off like Kano's my favorite hero in 2022. You know, but I think my favorite hero that's come out in 2022 is probably FaB. Okay. Not from like a personal play standpoint. I just think FaB is one of the best heroes for the game and the long term of the game. I think Ninja is such an important class to this game, and Katsu it's not really the hero we need, I think, when it comes to what Ninja probably needs to do for players entering the game. I think Ira, great in Blitz, right? Like such an approachable hero, fantastic for new players. I think FaB is that for players in Classic Constructed and can be. It's such a great pathway hero. And then you go, okay, now I should learn how to block. So now I'll move off FaB, you know. But it's a powerful hero. It's a great aggressive hero. It's still really good in this new Dynasty meta. It's going to continue to be a player. And I think it also has cool depth to it. And I think LSS can still design cards into what a Draconic Ninja wants to do. So it's probably FaB for me.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And to be fair, there was only one wrong answer, and that was Starvo.
Iceland?
So,
okay.
No. I Icelander, as annoying as Icelander might be, I do kind of enjoy it in a way. I mean, maybe because I enjoyed it in draft. Maybe I'm a little bit biased, but
limited goggles are on.
Yeah, I need to take them off for that answer. But Starvo was the only wrong answer.
Oh, sorry. Well, mine was Starvo then. No, I'm kidding.
Oh God, could you imagine that in limited? I guess it might not have been as good, but it could have been amazing. Who knows? But which was your favorite weapon from 2022? Now, Dynasty really upped the ante on this because we got all the really cool relics of war.
Yeah, I might have to say Hanabi Blaster, to be honest. I think that weapon is very, very powerful. It's cool to play with. I've had a lot of fun messing around trying to work out the best way to build the best Hanabi Blaster. So one of my favorite weapons in Flesh and Blood is Plasma Barrel Shot, which is not a particularly great weapon, but a weapon that I friggin' love from like a flavor standpoint, from like how do you build around this like setup kind of card. It's a weapon that can be set up, right? That to me is really, really cool. And Hanabi Blaster is pretty similar, right? Get the steam counters on it, set it up, have this free attack. So I've enjoyed playing around, trying to work out what the limits of that card is. I think it's a lot more powerful than Plasma Barrel Shot. It's probably that. Waning Moon's a close second. I think that card is really cool, but just seeing the repetitive way it's played in Icelander has made it a bit less exciting for me. Like I like seeing it more in Kano, but you know, it's powerful. Waning Moon is really powerful, and it didn't look like it when it came out, and I think that's really cool. I've enjoyed that as well.
Yeah, I would agree that it can be repetitive, but it's got Waning Moon, one of my favorite art, like maybe of the whole year. I would say for me, I think Rock was a big hit. I mean, it's just not necessarily great, but God, it's so cool. And then I'm partial to Merciless Battle Axe, but
that one looks cool.
Looks cool, not very good, but we'll one day I think that card will be awesome, and we're all going to be like, oh yeah, it's Merciless Battle Axe time. And if Flesh and Blood gets to that point, I'll be happy. So, which is your favorite equipment of 2022?
Yeah, that one's tougher. I think. I feel like this hasn't been the year for equipment compared to the year for weapons. You know, we had so many good equipment last year. It'd probably be a limited piece of equipment, I think. You know what? I'm going to say Glacial Horns as my favorite piece of equipment this year, because I think that was one of my favorite cards to... If I could do my best to have a Glacial Horns in my Icelander draft decks, like I would pick it pretty highly to make sure I had that card in my Icelander draft decks, because I think it was just so powerful against Draconic. So I'll go Glacial Horns. I think that, I think that was something that I picked up on early in my Icelander drafting and led me to having a lot of success in my Uprising drafts. Particularly, Icelander was the hero I drafted the most in Uprising throughout. I think it was like Icelander was probably about 60-70% of my drafts through Uprising. FaB would have been 20%, and then Dromo was like 5-10%. So,
that's a great pick. I'm glad that you picked a limited piece of equipment, because even like. I think, like, if I would think maybe for Constructed, Stalagmite would kind of
Hmm.
eke into there. Flamescale Furnace was a big one. I do enjoy that card, but I think Glacial Warrior is a great pick there.
I'll go under the radar. Pick something that's.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a bad pick whatsoever. Now, what was your favorite run of the mill card? Your attack actions, your non-attack actions, your instants that came out in 2022.
I mean, there's a lot of great ones from Dynasty, which is really cool, I think, and we're going to see those continue to be explored. And I love I think Assassin as a class is not something that particularly interests me, but I really like the design of some of the cards. A card like Shred, a card, like Annihilate. Like some of these cards are really interesting, I think. But I'm just gonna say Swing Big. It's probably.
Oh, I was just thinking that one.
It's a card that I think it's given me hope for Brute. So maybe it's my least favorite card because it's just given me this false hope. But this want to play more Rhinar. It's a cool card. I think I love the art on it. I know it's funny as well because I think it's the card at the World Championships that Jason Chung said he wish didn't get printed. He said Swing Big, which is really interesting. Just from a power standpoint, I think just the rate on that card. But it's probably the card that I keep coming back to from this year that I'm like, wow, I wish I could play more of this card, and I don't seem to play as much as I would like, but it'd probably be Swing Big.
You know what I wish they would do with that card is print the yellow and blue version so that we have another blue 6. That'd be too good, probably. But no, that's a great answer. I was actually thinking that same thing because Swing Big it's just like an auto include in any Brute deck, and that's awesome.
Do you want to? I asked about blue. I just jokingly we were playing this Uprising draft with the devs, and I was playing against Jason, and I made a play where it was like 50-50 to hit like the 6 attack to hit my Primeval Bellow and be able to kill him basically. And then I just jokingly said to him, I was like, well, this would be 100% hit if you just printed another blue 6 attack. And he just, Jason, I think it was Jason or Chris across the table looked and was just like, shut up. So I don't know. The feeling I got is we're not getting another blue 6 attack that's not talented anytime soon.
Oh man, such a shame though.
Or they're teasing me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, hey, listen, it could be just too good. Who knows? Now, I want to go through a couple different things, and we're going to play Smash or Pass with these things. So,
My favorite.
Smash means it was good. Pass means it was not so good. And then we'll talk about the biggest positives and negatives from each of those things that happened in 2022. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the first set to come out in 2022 was Everfest. Smash or pass?
Pass.
Why the pass on Everfest?
I just think in the context of, so don't get me wrong, Everfest still a good set, and I think what it showed for Flesh and Blood was that even with a weaker set that does things you probably don't want to see from this game long term, the game is still phenomenal and people are going to play it, and it's still going to have a great meta game, and people are going to find ways to be really creative about the way they build decks and things like that. But when I compare it to the full year with Uprising, with now Dynasty, those sets are they just overshadow Everfest and what it was in such a massive way. I mean, a big chunk of what Everfest was it, to me, there's a few things, right? Everfest, it lacked the flavor I want to see in Flesh and Blood sets, and I'm not even a flavor guy, but it has to make some amount of sense. And I think even Everfest for me, I'm like, oh, a lot of this doesn't make sense to me. A lot of the cards were just power increases, right? These cards that aren't actually that interesting, they're just powerful in some way. Blue Auras, I don't think are particularly interesting. They're just power increases. Revel in Rune Blood is a card that I like. I think that card is like kind of cool, but I don't think that is particularly the way that the game should go in terms of card design. I think Dynasty, on the flip side, is like the complete opposite. It looks a lot more like Crucible of War, brings breadth to these heroes, brings a lot of interest to the ways you can create heroes, and Everfest really didn't do that. And that's before you start talking about all these random items and potions and stuff that are never going to see play. And yeah, maybe they see a bit of play in PvE and stuff like that, but we don't have PvE yet. Yeah. 9 months ago. So yeah, it'd be a pass for me. But look, I mean, I still played it. I still enjoyed it. I still think it was a good set for the game. It's just comparative to the rest of the year and what we've seen, it's a bit of a downgrade.
Yeah. It felt like the cards that we used were not to add butter to the deck that
Yeah.
they went into. It just was like, oh, this is like boom, this is a big fat chili pepper they're adding to the deck. It's like, this is really good, right? It's not necessarily, a cohesive addition or anything like that. It was a lot of like big, flashy things, which is, it had some hits. We mentioned Swing Big. I think that was actually a huge win out of Everfest. But
But
what would
even
you?
Swing Big,
Yeah.
right? Like that card is not the template that card uses for future design. I don't think should be used again. I think Jason, when he said that at Worlds, like he really meant it. Like a 2-for-8 return. That's not really where they want to have the game, with pretty much no downside. You can talk about the quicken and stuff, but realistically, how many times have you played Swing Big and been like, "Oh no, my opponent's got the quicken here. I'm going to get so punished for this." It doesn't really happen that way, unless they've I've got Coast Commotion now. Okay, I've got double snatch. Like it doesn't really happen that way. So, and if you think about probably some of the cards that you hated sitting across from this year, you talked about Starvo already, Ice of the Blue Auras, things like this. Everfest was really polarizing as well, and it made a lot of games polarizing, I think. And I don't know if you felt that, Tommy, but I think that is kind of one of the downsides of that set, is it led to less interesting games.
Yeah, I mean, we were in a. I mean, it's so crazy to think about that moment of Everfest to Uprising, basically, when we were like, "Oh my God, Starvo is about to just hit Living Legend in like one season," and then he just missed, and then we're like, "Well, we'll tweak him a little bit for the Pro Tour," and then everybody's like, was it enough?" And then it ended up being crazy anyway, and then we saw ProQuest Season 2, with Chain kind of like coming back into, and getting Living Legend because of it. So it was crazy, no
Yeah.
doubt. So what would you say is the biggest positive from Everfest, though?
I think the biggest positive is, I mean, that would probably be what I said a bit earlier, which is that it just showed how resilient this game is and how good the fundamental designers of this game is that, and I think the design principles are so hard for them to break. This kind of idea of a card's value and this law of 4, I guess, that they use in a lot of their design principle. It's really hard for them to break a game or make it too power crept because of that. I mean, there's going to be power creep, and Alice has admitted that, but I think that Everfest showed the kind of restraints it has, and I think the meta was actually really interesting. I think having a meta game going into PT1 that looked really linear on the face of it was like a dream for players who wanted to try and break it. I think, and because there was this massive target on the back of Starvo and Chain, and we saw Prism, being sort of like written off, come back and make a top 8, and I still think it was really interesting. That was still a big positive.
And the biggest negative?
I just think the games that were played during Everfest just not interesting, just so polarizing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Before we get to Uprising, we did have classic battles coming out. Dorinthia versus Rhinar. Now, as a Brute player, I looked at that. I'm like, we didn't get like a lot from Brute, but hey, we got some cool things.
Without Glistening Steelblade.
Yeah, definitely not that. So, would you say the first iteration of classic battles has been a smash or a pass?
Like a soft smash, just a soft one.
With big tree or no?
With little tree, just whack with
yeah.
little stick. I think it's a step in the right direction. These products need to be printed. There's problems with this product, right? And I'm sure you can ask me about negative. There's definitely some problems, but it's to have these products on the potential horizon and have some products that can be accessible to new players potentially to showcase the game. I think when you open that box, it reminds me of like picking up some of these older TCGs and being like, oh, this is how I can get into it. I've got my 2 paper mats here. I've got the rule book. I've got this little lore book about what the game is. I've got 2 decks that are pretty linear, reasonably straightforward to play. I've got all the info I need to just crack into this and learn this TCG in a weekend. And I think that is a step in the right direction. That is something that we need for Flesh and Blood. There's a lot of things that aren't the right way there. I think, you talk about Glistening Steelblade, that leads to people buying this to just get this one card because it's only available there. there's other cards that they did do as promos, things like Run Through, stuff like that, which was good that we did get to see those as promos so people could pick them up without buying the packs. Price, there's all these other things as well, but I think it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it would be cool to see more of it for sure. And the amount of people that I actually witnessed just buy it because maybe they came to the LGS with their friend and they were like, "Hey, listen, I mean, I know you don't want to play the Armory, but let's just play this while everybody else is doing Armory." And that was very cool to see. But yeah, but you bring up some good points about everybody buying it just for one card and seeing that card like on the Discord going for like $30. I'm like, oh my god.
I do
What
want
was the
more. I was just
what
say I
was
do want
that?
more of this like more of these kinds
Yeah.
of products. I think the one thing, if I look at so far that Flesh and Blood, I feel like booster sets, and they've done a really good job of how they configure those, and even up until what they did with Dynasty with the cold foil situation, and yeah, that led to a bit of awkwardness in draft, but I think they've got a good handle on what they want to do with boosters. Their introductory product and their kind of standalone decks I just feel like they haven't got a good idea of what they want to do with that. But I do think this kind of like a battles, that is a good direction. They just need to refine it and take it in that direction. I think it's a better product than the Blitz decks, for instance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. Now, what would you say is the biggest positive from the set or from the product?
Yeah, it probably might end up being, all things said, the introduction of Quicksilver. I think of Dorinthia. I think the new Dorinthia probably is like the kind of takeaway from that, and just the fact that we've had this first iteration of this product, and we're hopefully going to see more.
Mhm.
Flip side, negative. To be honest, the biggest negative would be the price. I just think they
Yeah,
totally missed the mark with the price on this. This is an entry. I think it was, what was it in the US, was like $40 or something MSRP.
I think so. Yeah, some
Yeah,
some places even initially were 50, and I think it came down to the 40. Yeah.
yeah, which is another problem with the glistening steel blade sort of
Mhm.
piece of that equation. But so there's some things to learn around, and I think there's some ways that they can cut costs on that product as well, pretty easily. So yeah, I think that product needs to be, or they need to use it as a bit of a loss, to be honest, to get people into the game, because it's marketing for them effectively, right? That's what they need to look at it as. So maybe they even need to look at that they actually take a loss, and their wholesalers can take the profit or whatever it is, because they probably need to look at how this looks, because it probably should be max 25-30 US dollars, I would say, for this kind of product.
I agree. I agree. Now we had one draft set, as we mentioned, in 2022. It was Uprising. It was a 3-hero set with Icelander, Fi, and Dromine. We saw the introduction of Draconic as a talent. Hayden Dale, was Uprising a smash or a pass?
Oh, it's definitely a smash. I'll throw down with anyone who says otherwise. I think, even if you aren't particularly fond of the limited format, and there's a lot of people outspoken on how terrible they think the limited format is, fine, that's no worries. But the set itself, for what it's done for setting up the future of Flesh and Blood, I think is huge. We had a lot of issues with Monarch and Tales of Aria with the way these heroes were designed. I think we've continued to see bannings and the impact of whether it was Prism, Chain, Ultim, Briar. Like these heroes have had an impact. So far, things look pretty good for Uprising, and we're now 7 months post release or 6 months post release. We've had it with us for a while. We've had Pro Tour, we've had a Worlds, we've had National Season with these heroes. They look good, and I think they do a lot for the game. I think they're really interesting. Like I said, it sort of Fi is my favorite. Probably, the hero I think is the most rewarding for this game going forward because of what it can do for new players. And I think that's Dromai is super interesting. The design of dragons, it's not my thing personally, but I think the design of dragons over something like Spectra is a massive upgrade on design principles. Icelander is super powerful but super complex and has this really cool, interesting way to interact with ice that I think Ultim kind of missed the mark on. So yeah, I honestly, even if limited is not your thing, and I think this limited set is pretty solid, I'd give it like a 6 out of 7 out of 10. The constructed side and what this is going to do for setting up the game as we move forward into kind of like phase 2 of Flesh and Blood, I think is huge.
Yeah, it's interesting too because Fi is pretty, at least when it comes to constructed, pretty on rails. There's some, you can obviously switch out some equipment to make it hum a little bit different, but we've seen Dromai kind of have multiple iterations, like these aggro dromides that we're seeing, and then kind of that like really grindy classic illusionist kind of stuff. And you were right about Spectra being fixed. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, I felt like I was getting away with something the first time I hit a dragon with
did something else
that
afterwards.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I can still have my turn. This is incredible. And that was really interesting to me. And Dromai, or actually, we were just talking about Dromai, but Icelander also, I mean, we saw with the emergence of the Battle Wizard version, right? We kind of had this kind of regular ice wizard kind of plan, and then you see, you know, folks like Michael Hamilton emerge with these like like scar for a scar versions of the deck, which was pretty cool. And I think that's, yeah, like I agree, it's super healthy for the game and what it means for the rest of its time in the format. Now, what was the biggest positive?
Balance. I think the balance of the set, the heroes, and the foundation, it kind of lends for the move forward position for gameplay and design in Flesh and Blood, I think is super, super important. Yeah, I think it's got to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, any negatives?
Yeah, time spent with it. We spent too long with the set, especially from a limited standpoint, which is, I think, a lot of where the bitterness has come from. You know, had we spent 3 months, we had one, you know, had PT Lille and then maybe, you know, a skirmish season or whatever it be the limited season for Uprising, maybe even nationals at most, but to have worlds as well plus nationals for for a limited season, I think that's kind of the negative there.
Yeah, it felt very tiring to keep doing it, especially when worlds, like, you know, that was not a surprise, but it would have been cool if they were like, yeah, draft welcome to Wraith at worlds. That would have been pretty cool. Now we just had Dynasty, and we haven't had a lot of time with Dynasty, right? You know, it just came out last month. Is it a smash or pass so far for you, Hayden?
It's a pretty big smash, I think, so far. There's still more things to find out, I think, about it, in terms of there could be the big question I come back to is ultimately what impact will the set have on Classic Constructed and Blitz down the line. But first of all, it'll be Classic Constructed once we get into this ProQuest season, and as we head towards Outsiders, we get a really short window with Dynasty, which is it's probably not ideal, but it's going to be better than the alternative, like we just talked about with Uprising, I think. So what is its impact going to be on Classic Constructed? And if we get into this ProQuest season and, you know, FaB, Icelander, Briar, Ultim dominate the season, it's probably going to be a bit of a disappointment for Dynasty, because Dynasty doesn't really bring anything to those heroes, right? Like we talked about before, Dynasty is about spreading the wealth, bringing some of these heroes up, you know, a bit more diversity and, you know, new sort of archetypes for these heroes and classes. And if that means that there still is this gulf between, you know, a lot of these mid-tier heroes and even lower tier heroes and mid-tier heroes, so these kind of two gaps that you have, I think it's going to be disappointing. But my kind of takeaway so far is that it's not going to be the case. You know, I think Dash is going to have a big impact on this upcoming Classic Constructed season. I think we're going to see Rangers have an impact on this Classic Constructed season. It might happen towards the end, but Lexi looks really friggin' good in this set. And then I think some of the heroes that have been eternally poor, I think we'll see some things happen with them. But I think they're the ones probably, you know, I think of the Levias of the world, unfortunately. Sorry, Tommy.
Didn't get much.
Who probably kind of struggle the most out of Dynasty. But, you know, they can't do it all, I guess, in one set. But to have potentially 3 or 4 classes bump up and us have a really diverse metagame that could support 8 heroes doing well in this upcoming Classic Constructed season, that would be, I think, a big win from LSS's viewpoint. And I'd say we're on track for that, but I'll reserve judgment until ProQuest season comes through. But so far for me, I think it's also, I just think Dynasty reminds me a lot of Crucible of War. It's very different to Everfest. It's super fun, I think. It's really interesting. There's a lot of cards to explore, a lot of new ways to build heroes, and that in itself, even if the Classic Constructed meta doesn't change too much, for the more, you know, casual or armory level side of the game before you even get to this super competitive level of the game, super interesting and a really big win.
Yeah, it really opens up a lot of doors for deck building in all different ways. Now, when I look at it, I think the 3 heroes that might, you know, have benefited the most, like just off the top of my head, I think Dorinthia looks good, right? I think Dash looks amazing, right? And I think Reinar got some real good juice in Dynasty. So it'll be interesting to see how the ProQuest goes. What's the biggest positive?
I just think the return to this more crucible style of design, this width of cards rather than the height of cards, I think is great.
And the biggest negative?
It wasn't League of Worlds. I think that's the biggest negative. Like I'm personally selfishly glad it wasn't. It meant less sort of time to try and cram and understand, but it would have been such a spectacle. And we're only going to get Dynasty for ProQuest season basically, and a couple of callings, and that's it. So, well, obviously we'll have it longer, but we only get that format before Outsiders come. So I think it's a little bit of a miss.
Yeah, I agree. And let's go to OP. We discussed a lot about OP at the top now, and your experiences with it. Would you say organized play in 2022 was a smash or a pass?
Yeah, I think it's a smash. I think LSS have lived up to the billing. They said, here's our $1 million pro play, our organized play for 2022, and they mostly delivered on it. It looked a little bit different to, I think, how a lot of us thought it would look like. Coming off the back of those North American calling series in 2021, a lot of excitement for what 2022 would look like, and it ended up looking a little bit different. Spacing of events wasn't ideal because of more COVID impacts and I guess just the logistics impacts they have with sets, things like that. This infamous Pro Tour Allele Nationals Worlds happening in the space of a few weeks basically is, it's not where you want to be. But I think overall, LSS delivered on the idea of bringing this magic of a pro play system and a really sort of tiered organized play system to Flesh and Blood. We still had skirmish seasons. We still had ProQuest, Road to Nationals, Armories running. I think they did, all in all, you've got to give them a pass, Mike. I think they did a really good job. And they've talked about their learnings for 2023, and I'm excited to see those implemented.
Yeah, and they feel, they probably learned a lot, and it's going, we have somewhat of a structure, right, in 2023, and we just don't know where yet. And I mean, we know the first couple months, I will say, to give them credit. I just want to know where Pro Tour is, and then we're off to the races. But what was the biggest positive?
Yeah, biggest positive would probably just be this bringing the, I guess, the wonder of a professional game back to TCGs. Magic walked away from it for so long, and no one was really doing it well. And I think LSS delivered on that, and it was. Well, I think everyone had such a good time playing these events for the most part, which is, that's great.
No, and any negatives?
Yeah, I think the calling circuit not being leveraged enough is a bit of a negative. I think it's a bit of a loss, and I'm worried that we're not going to see it in 2023 either. That it's not going to be. I go back to those calling series in North America in 2021 where you went. Was it like there was Dallas and then there was Cincinnati, and like every couple of weeks there was kind of these callings happening around North America. I think there's a great opportunity to leverage that to bring Flesh and Blood to also, areas that don't get as much exposure. If Europe doesn't get a PT next year, then there should be a calling every 2 to 3 months in Europe and rotating around. And I think that was a miss this year, and I'm worried they're going to miss it next year. But I think that's a really big opportunity for them.
Yeah. I mean, I remember the Magic days. Those GPs were just, they were fun to look forward to, and when one would come to town, you'd be like, yes, I'm going. So hopefully that changes as well. The community. I know the answer to this one. Was it a smash or pass?
Pass. Everyone's terrible. No, hard smash. Obviously, everyone has just been, for the most part, amazing. And community is what continues to make this game so rewarding. Like outside of, obviously, fantastic game. It's a great game. The design, it has a healthy future, I think, and LSS do an amazing job. But I mean, it wouldn't be the same game without the community. These events wouldn't be the same without the community.
I agree. I'm gonna say biggest positive, but I'm not even gonna bring up the biggest negative. I don't think there's any real huge negatives. I guess I'll answer the negative part for you. There wasn't enough community hangout. I mean, because we can always use more. But yeah. What was the biggest positive for you in the community?
Yeah, I mean, it's what's going to keep me coming back, I think. Like I said, Lille wasn't the best event for me results-wise, but it's still up there equal in terms of my experience across the 4 events, the 4 major events I went to this year, because I got to do all the things I get to do. It's like it is. It's 70% play, 30% like being with friends and community. And to be honest, as I go to more and more, it might even be shifting to be, it's like, yeah, I go to play, but really I'm just here to hang out with friends and see everyone. I know for a lot of people that's literally what it is, right? It's like, and you people who are just like, I might not even bother playing the calling. Like I might just go out on like Saturday, like on the night before, because we're having dinner, or I might just stay out and just like I might not play the calling. Like you came here for that, and like, yeah, but I'm like having such a good time. Like I just play side events, like that's awesome. I love that.
It's amazing. It's like such a great way to experience it too, because then there's you don't have that feel bad on the way home, which it could happen if that wasn't there.
Now you just have the come down of like, I'm not going to see everyone for another 3 or 4 months.
That's true. That's true. That post event stuff is brutal.
The depression.
Now, yeah. What would you give Flesh and Blood in terms of a final grade this year? Maybe like out of 10.
Oh, out of 10. Okay, I had it really out of 5, but I'll give you out of 10.
All right, yeah.
Or just times it by 2. It's yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're both really strong at math, so it's really easy. Yeah. I'm gonna give Flesh and Blood 10 Steam counters, Tommy.
Oh, 10 Steam. Oh my God, that's amazing. I mean, you couldn't expect a better year, right? Out of such a young game.
Look, we can sit here. I'm sure we can talk for an hour, 2 hours about all the things we want to see improve with Flesh and Blood. Me and Brendan do that sometimes, like we've done it before. We've recorded it and we've put it out. There is definitely things that LSS can work on. There's things that Flesh and Blood can improve on. Heck, there's even things that the community can improve on, right? But like, I just, at the end of the day, I sit here and I go, this year has been one of the best years of my life personally. I think it's been the same for a lot of people in terms of being involved with Flesh and Blood. I think the game is phenomenal. And yes, there is definitely, like we said, things you can point out and say this can get better. If I was being realistic, it's probably a 9 out of 10. But I'm reflecting back on the year and it's been an amazing experience. So it's 10 Steam counters.
Yeah, well, hey, in relative to the world and the industry, right? If you told me 3 years into a brand new TCG in the 2020s that this game would have a fully fleshed out OP system, 3 large like successful releases of product, while one might be a pass, the other 2 were smashes. It's that's impressive. I wouldn't believe you 5 years ago if you told me that. So, yeah, great grade. I'll go with 10 as well.
I'll give you I still got one small little like story from this. In 2019, when I played the first calling, there was, I don't know, max 60 people in this room playing this calling. And I played the final. It was me and Matt Rogers in this final. We played the final, and then James wants to do photos of the trophy and stuff. He's there the whole time. He was like sitting at the table watching the finals. Like he was like, if 2 people sitting across from each other, he's sitting on the angle, like watching this whole game unfold as the table judge effectively. And then we get photos and stuff afterwards. And he was like, I'll see you at World Championships. And I was like, yeah. When's it happening? He's like, next year, 2020, there's going to be this World Championships. We've got this whole plan. I was like, okay, cool. And it didn't happen in 2020, but it definitely happened in 2022. And the man delivered on his word. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, hey, listen, if he tells you something, I think it's fair to expect it at this point. Now I have some time, some listener questions here. If you have time for it, Hayden.
For sure.
Yeah. First comes from my co-host from the Bud Rush Bellow, Gary, aka Mr. Viz. His question is about deck construction. Do you have a calculation for balancing pitches and costs?
Yes and no. not a formula or anything like that, but the way that I do a lot of my Flesh and Blood deck design and even testing and tuning through theory and sitting down and actually looking at what I'm trying to get out of said deck. I think it's even more important than playing for me personally anyway. So when I'm looking at deck construction, I already have an idea of like, okay, what do I want to do turn to turn? What does that mean for a resource standpoint? How many resources does my deck want to use on a turn-to-turn standpoint? Like yesterday, I was sitting down looking at Lexi, and I'm like, what do I want Lexi to look like in this format? And my thought was, okay, I generally want 3 resources. Actually, I want 3 resources every single turn for the way that I want to play this deck. So I'm going to look at my reds, making sure I can support, being able to utilize 3 resources. So that means that I want some 0-cost arrows because I know I'm probably going to activate my bow twice. So I need some 0-cost arrows. And then I'm going back to my blues. How many blues do I want? I landed on like playing like 26 blues in this Lexi deck I was building because I need 1.5 blues in every hand, and I can play 2 blues with every hand. So I just kind of take a step back and look at it, and then I'll tune from there, and then I'll go back and go, actually, you know what? Half the time, I only need 2 resources to play out this Lexi deck, so I don't need as many blues as I think. I don't need to. I often will give out the old, if there is some math involved, I'll get out the hypogeometric calculator. You can just Google the NTG hypogeo calculator, super helpful. And if it's like, okay, I want to draw a blue in my hand like as often as possible. So let's say it's got to be above 90% of the time. Chuck it in. Okay, 4-card hand. And then I'm like, how many blues does that mean to get 90% of hands? But if I'm like, I only need a blue every second hand, I can run off some yellows. So my rain raisers and stuff are reasonable pitch cards. So like maybe 50, 60% of the time, I'm okay having 2 blues in my hand. What does that look like? And then I'll work backwards. So maybe it's only 22 blues I need. So don't have like an exact science, but I do definitely, it's all about when I'm first looking at the deck. I know a lot of people will be like, here's my deck, I'm playing it out, I've grabbed a deck from somewhere else, or I've kind of had this idea and I'll just work it out as I go. I like to make sure all my ducks in a row before I even start, because I think you can waste a lot of time with testing and tuning a deck that just probably, if you sat down and fundamentally looked at it, it doesn't make sense.
That's a great answer. It's a great question. I have a question here from Sigma, who asks, as a combo fiend player, how viable would it be to build a pitch stacking combo Rhinar with Berserk, setting up for a very high ceiling play at some point? Do you think it would ever be viable?
I am definitely a combo fiend. Sigma's got that right. we did a full podcast on building combo decks a couple of weeks ago on Arsenal Pass, and it's one of my favorite episodes we've ever done, actually, because I think we look a lot at combo when we basically every deck I've played for the past 12 months in an event has been some form of a combo deck or had combo involved in it somehow, and I just think it's so powerful in Flesh and Blood. But I did try a Berserk Rhinar deck for the sort of first week and a half of Dynasty. I was meant to take a break from Dynasty. I was like, I'll come back in January before ProQuest and maybe play some games. Dynasty's too cool. Been trying all these decks, trying all these combo decks. And me and my friend Dan were trying this like Berserk Rhinar deck. Weren't trying to pitch deck or anything, actually. So Sigma's asking about, would you pitch deck? I don't think you actually need to pitch deck it. I think you can get a Blood Rush Bellows and get a Berserk, either one in Arsenal, draw the other, and you can go off from there. I think it has some viability. It's just super punishing, as Brute can be sometimes, because you can whiff on the first Berserk and all of a sudden the combo turns potentially really dead. I think you need to play Skullhorn. So if Sigma's looking for some things to look at, I think you have to play Skullhorn to enable you to trigger Berserk more. I think you play the Beaten Trackers, so you can trigger that on the combo turn. You just look for this one big combo turn. You don't worry about Scab Skins, and you play the chess piece, Barkbone Strapping, to make sure you can leverage your resources as much as possible. And you play all the cards that have relevant, the go again cards, all that stuff, and you play as many sixes as you can, and you just try and find those 2 cards, find an optimal hand, and you just go off. I think pitch stacking you could probably end up with a bit more output, but I think to get there is going to be so hard. So I would look at just trying to just do a combo.
Just smash,
Yeah.
It's the Brute way. I will say, I did play a Berserk Rhinar at Battlehardened Philly that first weekend of Dynasty, and I had a turn that was like I was playing Tunic, so I tunicked, played Berserk, and then played Sand Sketch Plan, and that turn turned into only 3 damage because I whiffed on my Berserk, and then I had another action point to try to not whiff on this Berserk. Or I had 2 action points, and then I was playing Medax, and I whiffed on that Berserk as well. So that was great, and that's Brute though. Them's the breaks. Sometimes you hit them for 30, sometimes it's 3.
Yeah, the deck can definitely. So the deck that we kind of put together was pretty simple. It's all the cards I kind of said. We played Claws, and you could very easily do over 30 damage. But yeah, sometimes you dealt 12 damage, and you basically lost the game because you took all this damage to do it. You did all the setup and no reward.
Yeah. We do have a question from Salty CK, who actually shouted out a little bit earlier. You like Indiana Jones?
Do I like Indiana Jones? Yeah, I like the 3 Indiana Jones movies that exist. the one that doesn't, we won't talk about. There's a new movie coming out though, so I don't know. I wonder if that will exist either. We'll see.
Yeah, we will see. We'll see.
Raiders of the Lost Ark is it's probably in my top 50 films of all time. I used to watch a lot of movies, big movie buff, and I think Indiana Jones is pretty good.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember getting the VHS box set of Indiana Jones as a kid, and I would rewatch them all the time. It was
With
amazing.
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, or
No, no, I'm not that. I'm not that young. I'm not that young. I don't. I think that
I'm
was
kidding.
still. Yeah. I don't. I don't know which film you're talking about. What is that?
Yeah, it doesn't, what film's that?
Capolo asked, when you guys picked Arsenal Pass as the name of your podcast, were there other names you guys were considering?
Yes, yeah, lots in fact. So this is kind of a funny story about this. Like when we decided to do this, me and Brendan got on a Discord call, and at the time there used to be this Discord with like some friends who played Flesh and Blood, kind of some of the early guys, like the Rob Seigels of the world, and Sasha Markovic was also in there. Although I think at this time he'd already moved to LSS. But me and Brendan are on this call, and we're like, what do we call this? And we're just like typing names into the chat and stuff. We went through so many names. The funniest thing is that some of the names that we were like on our shortlist now people use for podcasts. So like Living Legends podcast was like one of the ones we were looking at. There's now I know Renzo Rogan friends have that. Sparks of Genius was like that was the one I liked the most. But Brennan and Sasha were both like, that one sucks, so we didn't use it. I think it's great, and I know that one's used now. But there was like +1 Intellect was one of them. The Reaction Phase, From the Savage Lands. I went to the Discord and like pulled these out after I saw this question. Cold Foil Cast, Command and Cookout, which is a section we use in our podcast, was a kind of a joke name for the podcast. Plus there was some less savory names that were being bantered around in there as well. Some Flesh and Blood dirty puns, which obviously weren't real considerations, but quite funny.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's no doubt that Arsenal Pass was the real winner there, and it really has that kind of wow factor. So good job on picking
Just
that
got
one.
lucky, I think. Just something that permeated and made sense. So
Yeah, it's awesome, and it's funny. I will say sometimes, like when with the buds, and playing games, I'll say fresh and buds at the end of turn, just so I don't say another podcast. Got to keep it.
yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
Well, so sometimes I say instant speed.
Oh, there you go.
Just
give it to Flake. Why not?
But I'm gonna start saying fresh and buds.
Fresh, yeah, why not? Yeah, say that at the next pro tournament. See what happens. You're like, what? Oh no, nothing. Don't worry about
it. Just go.
Yeah, it's just your turn. So the year's coming to a close here. Do you have any New Year's resolutions?
Do I have any New Year's resolutions? I just balance is like my biggest thing for the end of this year and next year. Flesh and Blood it's again such an important part, and I friggin' love it, and I'm not leaving it anytime soon. But I definitely am striving for more balance in my life next year between work, personal life, Flesh and Blood, health, and fitness. So I think I'll overall spend less time on Flesh and Blood, but that's because surely everyone knows this, right? We're all Flesh and Blood players here. We all love the game. You just sit there and you're just doing something, and all of a sudden just something pops into your mind from the side about Flesh and Blood, and all of a sudden for the next 15 minutes you just think about, wow, why isn't Swing Big, coming blue? And then 15 minutes so I'm just going to try and stop that. 15 minutes dead time there that I probably didn't need to use. So I still want to play as much. I still want to travel to these events. Obviously, one less pro tour means a bit more potential downtime and a bit more sort of ability to balance things out. So yeah, that's my focus. Been doing a bit of cooking, things like that, a bit of reading, trying to catch up on things like that. So that's I'm going to try and take that forward into 2023.
Awesome, and the fact that we have somewhat of a roadmap is going to help plan out that time, right? You know at least when the things are supposed to happen, so you can be like, well, I have a week here, I have a week there, which is nice. My resolution is to read a book a month. I did that in 2019. I'm gonna get back to it. I've read one book this year, and I feel horrible about it, but it is hard, right?
It's
travel.
hard, yeah.
I mean, it's like I want to play Flesh and Blood, and I can't help it. So
what's on the shelf? What's on the shelf for January or February? What are the books that you're going to first?
Oh man,
what kind of books does Tommy Fresh read?
I read a lot of horror, fantasy, sci-fi. I'm looking at some books that I have on the shelf to my right now. I have Dune Messiah. I read Dune at the beginning of this year. I want to read the sequel to that. I have a couple books. I just bought a labor law book. For whatever reason, I was at a punk rock flea market, and I was like, that one sounds cool. Power to the man or something like that.
Yeah, so you're that's an interesting dynamic, but okay.
Yeah. So it was very interesting. But the stuff that interests me. So I'm excited to get reading. There's a lot of stuff. I might even just reread Lord of the Rings because I love Lord of the Rings so much. So that could be on the docket. So we will see.
Love it. I've been enjoying getting back to reading. I'm about to finish the first of the Mistborn series, Brandon Sanderson. Just
okay, nice.
Most of the way through that. I'm going to finish that before Christmas. Got the second book that arrived in the mail. Probably finish that before we get to the new year. So,
oh man, so you're powering out.
It's the end of the year. I'm off work from tomorrow, so I'm just gonna chill.
Nice. I love to hear that. Maybe I'm gonna have to get a jump start on the books for next year. But Hayden, this has been wonderful. And obviously, I always enjoy having you on and just chatting with you in general. You're a great resource and a great part of this community and this game. And I'm glad that you get to spend this little time with us, the buds and myself. Can you please plug anything that you'd like to plug? And thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for making me one of the buds. I appreciate being involved. And thanks for having me back on for a second time. Yeah, you can find me on Arsenal Pass over at YouTube, youtube.com/Arsenal Pass. We have a podcast as well that's available on all major podcast platforms. And I'm on Twitter at Fian_Dale, like the tunic, but my last name is Dale. So very witty pun there. And yeah, that's kind of it, really.
Awesome. I'll have that all in the show notes. You can all continue to find me on Twitter at FreshBudsPod. If you're listening to this on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. Check out the Bud Rush Bellow. We also, check out the merch. That's I mentioned at the top of the show. Join the Buds Discord. It's a good place to be. A lot of great people. We have a lot of fun there. Check out the Patreon. And and I always like to end the podcast talking a little bit about food. It's the holidays right now. What's the Hayden Dale dish for the holidays?
The one dish I request every single year at family Christmas is an ambrosia. If you know what ambrosia is.
Well, is it with the mandarin orange and?
Ooh. Yeah, see, it's regional, right? It's got to be I guess the New Zealand version is literally like yogurt, marshmallows, fresh berries, maybe some chocolate chips.
Okay, all right, yeah. I've had it as a child, but it was with like oranges and stuff.
Yeah,
so
generally some sort of fruit. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, some fruit, some yogurt, and the marshmallows are the biggest part.
Marshmallows are key. You've got to have them. If there's no marshmallows in there, don't care. It's not. No matter what else in there. If there's no marshmallows in there, get it away from me.
Oh man, yeah. Well, maybe I'll have to revisit that. I haven't had that maybe in like 20 years. So, I hope you're having it this weekend, my friend, and everybody, please have a good week.